Hi, it's Brianna Lennon, and you're listening to High Turnout Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local election administration. Today, we're speaking with Angelica Caraman, the current chairperson of the Central Election Commission of the Republic of Moldova.
Moldova, as you might remember from some of our previous episodes, is a relatively small country of about 2.5 to 3 million people, nestled in between Romania and Ukraine. It was part of the former Soviet Union, but has been independent since the early 1990s. And its Central Election Commission, that's the organization that oversees and helps coordinate all the elections in the country, just celebrated its 25th anniversary on the 24th of November. So it's a fitting time to hear this conversation.
We're going to be hearing from the chairwoman, but since she's mostly speaking Romanian in this episode, you'll also be hearing her through an interpreter, Corneliu Pisat, the Director of Communications for the Commission.
The full and free exercise of our sacred right and duty to vote is more important in the long run than the personal hopes or ambitions of any candidate for any office in the land.
You're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, an insider's look at election administration hosted by Brianna Lennon and Eric Fay.
Madam Chair, thank you so much for meeting with us today. Meeting with two election officials that you don't know from the United States. We really appreciate that. And Brianna and I were just saying this is the interview we have been most looking forward to in Moldova. So we're so excited to be here. And the first question we always ask in our interviews, if you could, is explain to the listeners, how did you end up working in elections?
Și eu vă salut aici la Comisia Electorală Centrală. Suntem bucuroși să vă avem în
So I also would like to welcome you at the CEC premises. We'll be glad to discuss with you about the challenges, about the best novelties that we have in the electoral field here in the Republic of Moldova. Speaking about how did I get into electoral field, I would say that electoral field was the one that has chosen me. It was the perfect combination between electoral administration and public administration. So the first elections that I have been involved in organizing, like a representative of a state body, were in 1996. These were presidential elections. So now I can already make a comparison between how elections were in that time and today.
So can you talk a little bit about how it has changed?
Deci pot să vă zic că atunci am luat parte.
So back in 1996, I was representative of local public administration for a sector of Chișinău municipality. We had around 42 polling stations, and we were in charge to ensure all the logistics. Of course, we are preparing, first of all, the voting rolls, and we have to prepare them at the typing machine, and everything was made at these typing machines, and of course, it was challenging.
Și cu adevărat pot să zic că s-au schimbat foarte multe lucruri, pentru că în acel 96
So,
nu exista încă o lege.
the second thing is that in 1996, we had different laws for different types of elections. But in 1997, all these different laws have been combined into electoral code, one unique document that regulates all types of elections. Also, in 1997, the electoral code has established that the Central Electoral Commission will be a permanent and independent body. So now we have a Central Electoral Commission that has 9 members. 8 members are nominated by the Parliament, respecting the proportionality between the majority and the opposition, and 1 member is nominated by the President of the Republic.
Astăzi ne conducem de un plan strategic. Deci,
Today, our activity is governed also by the strategic plan. It was adopted in 2020 and is valid until 2023.
Dar ce ar fi important să vă spun este că activitatea în diverse
But what is important to underline that I had the experience of having different positions in the electoral field. So I have started in local public administration. I was also a member in a district electoral commission. I also had the position of a candidate in elections. And of course, this helped me a lot to understand this electoral field from different perspectives. And now I can say that it's easy for me to understand which are the main issues, challenges, and where we have to make changes in order to improve this field.
That's very interesting because in the United States, we don't have a central election commission. We have nothing like it. All the elections are administered at a very local level. And I wonder, does the CEC work to train people from lower levels to have experience in this profession to work their way up?
Ați atins un aspect destul de important.
So you have touched a very important issue. So right now we actually are working on reforming the electoral legislation. And one of our proposal is to have permanent electoral bodies at the district level in order to make them more professional and to have continuous staff, because we are aware of the fact that the quality of electoral officials has a big impact on the quality of the whole process.
Și persoanele după alegeri,
But of
cei
course we
care
have
în
some
special
persons in every electoral management body of lower level that are not permanent, but they are repeating. Usually these are persons that are elected in management position. It's the chair, deputy chair, and the secretary of these electoral bodies. And actually after each elections they say that, okay, this is enough, these are our last elections. But after, when we have the next elections, they accept and they continue to work with us. And of course, this is our base in the territory, in organizing elections.
I am really interested in the strategic planning element, especially since this one would have been adopted during the pandemic. But also, and I'm asking because this is something we deal with, is trying to increase public trust in elections, trying to fight back against disinformation. Are those parts of the current strategic plan that you're doing now?
Deci, dintre obiectivele de bază ale planului strategic
Yes,
este
actually, our
optimizarea
strategic plan,
anumitor
the main goal is to offer quality services to the citizen. Actually, we are a service provider. So the main goal is to reach each voter by different communication means, but also to develop different technologies that will help them to, in a more transparent but also accessible way, all the electoral procedures. And of course, according to this plan, we are planning different information and education campaigns, but not only during the electoral period, but even between the electoral periods. We're speaking already about civic education, because their main goal is to ensure this credibility in electoral process, the credibility in the electoral management body, and to fight with disinformation and misinformation.
Primul îndemn este ca să se informeze din surse sigure.
Of course, we are encouraging citizens, voters, to get informed from sure and trustworthy sources. We have a specialized webpage. It's called votează.md. In translation, it will be vote.md, where they can find information. And of course, we have our official webpage, www.cc.md, where they can easily find also different important information. information for voters, but also for our electoral stakeholders. We prepare different key messages. And for example, we had a campaign, very interesting campaign that was called Fighting the Myths, because in the society, in every society, there are different myths related to elections. For example, related to how the voters' rolls are prepared or how some infringements can happen in elections. So we were giving different explanations on these myths in order to clarify the things.
Ca exemplu să vă dau, cineva transmitea
For example, one of the myths that was in our society was that the pen can have an invisible ink, and after they have marked the ballot paper, it can disappear. But actually, according to our procedure, we do not vote with pens, but we have a specialized stamp with voted written on it.
It sounds very similar to what we deal with.
It's amazing how similar these things are. We even had in the state of Arizona in 2020, they called it Sharpie Gate. It's a type of ink pen of sorts, a marker. And there was this myth that marking the ballot with the Sharpie would invalidate the ballot. And even the electoral officers said it is fine. They even give Sharpies to mark ballots. So these myths, all election administrators battle myths like this. Hey, it's Eric Fay, Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri, and this is the Moldova edition of High Turnout, Wide Margins. In this episode, we are speaking with the head of the Central Election Commission of Moldova, Angelica Caraman. You're hearing her through her interpreter, Corneliu Pasat. One of the challenges you mentioned earlier with the workers in the polling stations, that it can be difficult to get them to come back and work the next election. When we spoke with one of the members in Orhe in the District Election Commission, we asked him at the end, if you had unlimited money, what would you do? And he said, I don't need money. I need workers, because these young people are leaving, and it's difficult to find people to work the computerized system, and that's a major challenge. And American election administrators have the exact same challenge, finding enough qualified people to work in the polling station. So I wonder if the CEC has devised any strategies to recruit more workers for polling stations.
Noi avem un registru al funcționarilor electorali, unde includem persoanele care au participat în alegeri sau care au...
Of course. First of all, I'd like to tell that we have a state register of electoral officials. There we register all the officials that have previously worked into elections, but also all the persons that have passed the training courses that are being organized by our training center. Where we also introduce the operators. In every polling stations, we have to have at least 2 operators, but they operate the computer. And especially in rural regions, it's quite challenging to find specialists that will have enough capacities to perform this job.
Și pentru noi va fi o provocare, pentru că vrem în perspectivă să înlocuim acești operatori.
So for the future it will be even more challenging, because we want to give this job of these 2 operators to the poll workers, to the members of the precinct electoral bureaus, in order to optimize the whole process. Well, the process will be faster, because right now, for example, each voter, when they come into the polling station, they have to register at the operators. The system is interconnected among all the polling station. So this system can help us to fight the multiple voting, because the person is marked electronically, but afterwards the person has to continue at the poll member in order to get registered in a printed voter roll So for the future, this will be faster, but we'll have to find not only members, but with capacities to do also the job of the operator.
Și atunci când vă vorbeam despre comunicarea cu cetățenii, unele dintre
Mrs.
programele
Chairperson
noastre
was
se
speaking
orientează
about
pentru a
working with citizens in terms of different information campaigns, and we are encouraging them to participate in elections not only as voters, but also with poll workers.
My personal strategy for recruiting some poll workers is anytime a voter goes to the polling station and they call me back and complain, they say this process, wasn't working as well as I would like. I then ask them back, would you like to be a poll worker in the next election? And usually they just hang up the phone at that point. So
I really liked how you characterized the CEC as a service provider. That's how I like to think about elections administration too. We've heard from some other people that we've interviewed about the potential for more structural changes to things that would impact voters, like the potential for a second day of voting instead of just one day. Is that something that you've given thought to?
Vă spuneam că am venit cu propuneri la modificarea codului electoral și, într-adevăr, se regăsesc propuneri pentru a îmbunătăți procesul de vot.
Improving the legislation. First of all, the biggest issue actually with the participation of voters is for voters from abroad, because unfortunately, until now, we cannot ensure that all the voters that stay in a row during the E-Day will have a possibility to cast their vote, even if we have increased the maximum number of ballot papers that we issue to the polling stations open abroad, because in comparison to the polling stations opened inside the country, where the maximum limit is 3,000 ballots, so for polling stations from abroad it's 5,000. Well, actually this is a maximum capacity. But still we have these challenges, so we search now for new solutions.
Și atunci ne propunem să optimizăm procesul de votare.
So in order to optimize the voting procedure to make it faster, first of all, we are thinking that maybe the problem is not only in the number of the polling stations that we are opening abroad, but also in the geography where they are situated. So we propose to open the supplementary polling stations abroad where we have at least 500 voters, but also to digitalize the process of preparing the voters list for abroad, because for abroad we do not have permanent list like updated for each elections like inside the country. We have open voter rolls. So for the future, we would like to implement a procedure that will scan actually the ID, and afterwards the voter will sign on a pad. So in such a way, everything will be easier and faster. Also, it's a future plan to implement iVoting. Of course, at this stage, it's a concept. It's under discussions. It's under consultations. We have created a group of different state bodies. So during this week, we'll have the presentation of a first concept. This is like a product of the work of this group.
Și provocarea cea mare pe lângă securitate va fi și încrederea cetățenilor.
And of course, besides ensuring the security of such kind modality of voting, the biggest issue will be the trust of people, how prepared they are in order to cast their vote by internet.
And this is more of a political landscape, I guess, question, but do you feel like election reform, these kinds of recommendations are a priority to get passed, or do you think that it will be difficult to get some, if not all of them, passed or none of them passed through Parliament?
Noi suntem optimiști și credem că vor avea susținere, ori la evenimentul în care am prezentat.
And we think that we'll have the needed support. We'll have a hard work to bring the needed arguments and to promote the necessity to approve these changes, these amendments to the electoral law. But besides this work with legislation, with state body, we'll have to have a huge work with citizens, with voters, to explain them why this is needed, to inform them about these new amendments. And I'm happy because during the last year we have diversified our messages, but also we have diversified our target groups. Now we are going even to the kindergarten. Actually, this was one of the dream of the Mrs. Chairperson to start the work, right from the beginning, because of course it's important to inform the voter and to motivate the voter to participate on elections day, but it's more important, to grow this voter.
Is there anything that you want to share that we haven't asked?
Da, mă gândeam să vorbesc despre size alegeri.
So just one thing, because I think it is one of the major thing that has been achieved by the CEC is to speak about the State Information Automated System elections. This is a system that has different modules, and the goal is to digitize the electoral process. We have, for example, the State Register of Voters. We have also the State Register of Poll Workers that I have been mentioning already. Also the financial control of political financing and the electoral campaign.
Și asta este răspuns la întrebare, ce face CEC în afara alegerilor?
Actually, this will be one of the answers to the questions that we usually get. What does CEC do when they do not have elections?
Well, that's one question you won't get from people like us, because we also receive that question quite often, and we know how important that time is outside of election day in preparing for the next election. I think my personal main takeaway from my time here in Moldova is, while the details are different, the challenges election administrators face are very similar. And this conversation has reminded me of that. And again, we appreciate your time today with us, very much so.
Mulțumesc tare mult. Thank you so much.
Thank you also. Thank you very much. It's also being a pleasure to communicate with you. And it's great actually to know that somewhere over the ocean there are some people that are thinking about Moldova, and they have a pleasure to speak with us about elections.
You've been listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast that explores local election administration. I'm your host, Brianna Lennon, alongside Eric Fay. Thanks to KBIA for making this podcast possible. Our managing editor is Rebecca Smith. Our managing producer is Aaron Hay, and our associate producers are Abigail Ruman and Katie Quinn. This has been High Turnout, Wide Margins. Thanks for listening.